Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Quantum Mystic Podcast. I'm Lisa Campion, and I'm here with my dear friend, Jane Bear. And we are talking all things quantum, like we always do. And today we wanted to talk, it's coming into the holiday season. We just got past Thanksgiving and we're going into Christmas. And we wanted to talk about what it's like to be around your family. You're on the spiritual path, you're meditating, you think you're doing great, and then the holidays happen, and all of our hard work and spiritual practice goes out the window. And it made me think about Ram Dass, who has a quote that said, let's see, let me look it up again. He says, if you think you're spiritually enlightened, try spending a week with your family. And ain't that the truth?
Amen. Yeah, it's so good. It's like it's like powerful and playful, and Ram Dass is so fantastic. And it's like those spiritual lessons are just often, if not always, embedded in our closest relationships, and particularly with our family, which is very it can be sticky.
Yeah, so sticky. And I mean, if you're listening to this and you're from a family that's totally harmony and peace, and you never have a crossword to say to each other, you never get triggered, that's awesome. Like, so I celebrate that. But that for the most part, I think that's not always what we get. And the holidays are really hard because, well, I think it's the inner child. Like if you walk into your old house, especially if you live in the same, you're going back to visit, even if it's not the same exact building, it might be this, you're walking back into the energy pattern that's in your family. And I walk in the door and I'm like 5 years old again. I'm 8 years old again or 10 years old again. And then I'm trying to navigate complex family situations. And I'm from this kind of regressed state of my inner child. So we just get all our inner child just gets automatically activated when we're back with the fam.
Totally. And you jump back into the pattern of being like, for me, I'm the youngest, I'm the baby. And so in my normal life, I'm the mother. And so I don't get to play that role as the baby very often, as like the youngest sibling. And so when you kind of like go back into the family system, you end up, it can, I mean, it can be really fun, actually. It can be quite playful, and it can be bring up like the best parts of everything. And
Right.
also, there's often just like one little thing that can be said, and it will trigger a response, whether because we're conditioned by our families, we're conditioned by their traumas, we're conditioned by like ancestral stuff. So it's quite layered.
Totally layered. And I think there's kind of this gap too that sort of between what we expect. So especially if we're like, or and what we hope for, we want a loving family. We watched a lot of Hallmark movies. We want a Martha Stewart Christmas. We want, and the inner child part of us never stops wanting our parents to love and approve of us. Doesn't matter how old you are. So
Yeah.
there's sort of this expectations, hopes, and wants. And then on the other side, there's what you really get.
Yeah.
Like what really shows up, and that gap is, I think, so painful when there's such a split. Maybe that you want that, I'll be home for Christmas, kind of vibe, and you have like parents who don't get along, or there's divorce, or somebody died, or somebody's in jail, or somebody's estranged, or somebody's an alcoholic, or all the dysfunction, trauma, and pain that, and usually it's a mixed bag. You get some of the good stuff and some of the dysfunction, but I think it's that, like, what our inner child wishes would happen versus what actually shows up. That's super painful.
Yeah. And I also think that the family system, or families, our family members are often act as our greatest mirrors.
Mhm.
It's like the clearest, cleanest mirror to our unresolved shadows. And it's because of that conditioning that it brings those same things up back to be healed. So it's often hard to look at it this way, but ultimately it's like having gratitude for the fact that, oh, here's still all these lessons and all this work that I have to do. Thank you, family. But it's why it's so hard is like we actually think that we've outgrown it or we think that we've transcended it because we're not around those triggers. And so it's really easy to get frustrated and that's when like the spiritual practice is so important. If we have the tools, we can really operate from a place of like going in and being like, okay, I'm gonna go do some work. And like, can I stay in with an open heart and compassion
Can I
and
drop my expectations of what
yeah,
I think is going to happen? Can I nurture my own inner child? Because, you know, you might be like in your midlife, 40 years old, 50 years old, and you still want your parents to parent you like you're a kid. That's not going to happen, chances are. So can you parent yourself, you know, and like look at your expectations, give yourself what it is you need, right? So that kind of there's a liberation for me anyway there around, well, I can just show up with these other groups of humans who are really interesting,
yeah,
and sort of takes the hook out of my expectations of what I think I'm going to get and the disappointment that I feel if I don't get it.
absolutely. Yeah. And to feel that disappointment and be like, okay, I am, and there's like a greater acceptance of what actually is.
Right.
You're saying, okay, it's not Hallmark, but that's okay.
It's not
But
Martha Stewart. That's okay.
that's okay. It's not perfect, but in its imperfection comes that perfection, right? Because
Totally. I think when we're not in the expectation, we can, if we're totally disappointed and triggered and inner child, we might miss the actual sweet things that happen, and if we're not, there are usually, I mean, it depends on your family, I guess, but there's often actual sweet moments to be had, that real moments of real connection, moments of real joy, that if you're all triggered and reactive, you just don't even notice those things.
right. So, allowing yourself to sort of be non-reactive, but also to have like humility and humor. Like we don't need to be right. Do we really need to be right in this moment? No, we don't. And finding humor as like a continuous spiritual practice. Like we're still human. We're still very much human, and that's the point. We're in human form, so it's never going to be a Hallmark movie, except that it is if we accept it exactly how it is.
Yeah.
Like our this is our version. This is our version in this lifetime.
I think there also is something about like advocating for yourself, like learning to say no, or like, we're not going to talk about that, or we're going to agree to disagree. Like there's some kind of sometimes boundary setting, or
Yeah.
no saying we have to have if things really get outrageous, or, you know, and I think this time that we live in now, it's sort of harder than ever because we're so polarized politically, socially, economically. There's sort of all these like separating factors that pull us apart. And, like, what do you do when you have one person who's maybe really liberal, and one person who's really conservative, or one person who's really religious and one person who's not? They're sitting around the table, like, how do we then manage? Maybe that's where you have to throw a boundary down and be like, let's agree to not talk about that, let's agree to disagree. Like, or if it gets abusive, like, you can't actually talk to me that way, you know so sometimes you do have to throw down too.
Yeah, I think that's super key, like setting the boundaries with love,
Yeah.
because going back to in like that feeling of oh, I'm enlightened. Enlightenment doesn't mean tolerating harmful behavior.
Right. Doesn't mean you have to put up with abuse.
Yeah, ever, never. And so
Right.
learning to say no and creating those healthy boundaries really in a way that's respectful to yourself and others is like a part of the spiritual path. and
Yeah.
navigating relationship.
Yeah, and that's sort of what you were talking about those old roles. And I think that, could be birth order roles, but it could also be like you're the people pleaser, you're the peacemaker, you're the black sheep and everything you do is crazy and outrageous, or you're, like whatever, you're the enabler, you have to rescue and save everybody. Like, you know, there's so much heavy gravity around that,
Yep.
that we can get pulled back into that like form. It's like a construct, like a thought form. We can get pulled into that and be really stuck with it in a way,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. Yeah. Oh, it's so fascinating. And, you know, being able to identify those roles, I think is pretty important. The roles that we've played and okay, is this in alignment with with who I actually am, with my true self? And
Yeah.
if I've done all this spiritual work and I am thinking that I'm enlightened, am I acting in alignment in every moment, no matter what, even when we're around people who might see us in an old way, in an old held pattern in the family system, you know.
Yeah. And what do we really want? And like, do we have to accept that pattern? Like, can we be conscious of it? Can we be like, oh yeah, I'm being called on to do that thing now. Do I really want to do it? Do I have another choice? What happens if I don't do it? What happens if we do something different, you know, to break that pattern? And I think there's liberation in there. It might be hard, it might upset the apple cart, but I also think it's liberating in a lot of ways.
Yeah, the pattern interrupter.
Yeah.
My grandfather was a psychoanalyst and worked with a lot of people. He was a um professor at UCLA, and he always said the hardest thing to do is to change the family pattern. Um, and it really becomes our job and our dedication, if we want to do that, to be like, okay, I see you patterns, and I'm not going to act in that same way. And can I have compassion for those who are still acting in that same pattern? Because that's really the oneness. It's like we're still humans in this web, this very connected, interconnected web. It's like we're not separate just because we're family.
Right. Such a good point. Such a good point. And I think that, yeah, the only thing weirder than your own family is other people's family. we're, we're like used to our flavor of weird in our own family, right? But then you get married or you have a partner and then you have to deal with their family and you're like, what is this? And they're like, what do you mean? That's just normal. Like, right? That they're used to it. That's no big deal for them. And I used to sort of think that when I was in dealing with other people's families, I used to consider myself like an anthropologist, you know. I'm going in to like discover the strange tribe, to experience the strange tribe, and that kept me more in the curiosity and out of judgment,
Yeah.
instead of being super judgy about other people's family weirdness.
Yeah.
Like, well, what's going on here, and why is this, and I think if I don't know what to do in a family, somebody else's family, I just ask questions. Like, I'm like, what was it like for you? And, what was your childhood like? And because I think people are interesting. So um kind of exploring a foreign land, and when you have to deal with other people's families.
That's
Such
a
a
really good approach. Yeah. Yeah. Approach it with curiosity, just like an anthropologist.
the
Like,
strange
oh,
unknown tribe.
I didn't know this existed. It's good because, the last thing we want to do is to get into judgment. And that maybe that's what happens, is because sometimes we do so much work to climb ourselves out of our own family dynamic or how we were perceived as a kid or whatever it is, that when we go back, it's almost like this foreign family system that we want to reject, and it becomes judgment. We become judgmental.
Yeah.
That's not the work. That's not it.
That's not the work. Yeah. But everyone has family has dysfunction in it, and it's just like somebody else's flavor of dysfunction feels so much more weird than yours, even though it's not. It's you're just used to it. You're used to yours, you know.
Oh, it's so messy and
Mm.
wonderful.
I think the sort of the last topic here would be like, well, what do we do? And I know when we travel, we maybe you're traveling, you're out of your routine, you're out of your home environment. That sort of can also add complications because you maybe the tendency is to let go of the um, practices and structures and disciplines we put in place to keep us on an even keel. So all of a sudden you're eating a ton of sugar, you're drinking alcohol, you don't usually do that, and you traveled, and now your stomach's upset, and you're not getting your walk, your exercise, you didn't bring your supplements, you can't sleep in a weird bed, and you quit meditating. So yeah, like I think we add that on top of it, and I think the tendency is to quit all those things. And I don't always get to do this, but my strategy is, instead of quitting it, let's double down on it.
Yeah,
Let's double down and really lean into our practices to support us.
100%. And then it's the things like it's the emotional responses and really being able to observe ourselves without reaction, which is hard, but you have to be able to notice like when the pattern is arising, and are you reacting from your heart or are you reacting from the past? And
Right.
then can I have can I have compassion? Can I hold compassion no matter what? For myself, for everyone around me, for everyone's conditioning and journey, and really staying present. I think that it's easy to not. And I don't know. I think that's true in life. I don't know that it's easy to not stay present for in just regular life, let alone family life. But
I
uh,
find love that you said that. And I find when I can't stay present, I need a break. I'm
yeah,
gonna take a nap. I'm gonna take a walk. I'm gonna read a book. I'm gonna get in the bathtub. If nobody bothers you when you're in the bathtub, like I'm gonna be like, like check out for a minute and be in my own space so I can rest and get. It takes a lot of energy to stay conscious,
it does.
especially in tricky situations. And there are times when I'm like, I'm just too tired to do it. I need to excuse myself and rest for a minute.
Well, and excuse yourself and like manage your own energies, because really
Yeah.
ultimately that's what's most important, is if we can keep ourselves, because being in a state of love and compassion is a higher state of like a higher state of existence, a higher consciousness. And so if we can't do that, then there's something in our field that needs to be cleaned and cleared. And
Or I'm too tired to do it. Like I just expended a lot of energy and I don't have it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then also just the gratitude piece, like, can I, really like embrace this as the lesson that it is, and recognize like it's a moment of tension, it's a moment of difficulty, but it's an opportunity to deepen our practice. 100% of the time, it's an opportunity. And if
Yes.
like really remember that right in the moment, then it's like, okay, it can be diffused, you know?
Right. And it's bringing up the deepest, most difficult parts of us that need healing, those family patterns, the lineage stuff, childhood trauma, childhood wounding. It's what needs healing the most in
Yeah.
so the opportunity is, here's another layer of the onion. Here's another pattern, here's another wound, here's another like glitch in my nervous system, like whatever it is that I'm gonna heal and release.
Yeah. That's why it's so good.
That's why it's so good.
So good. Hard.
It's hard but good.
Good.
Anyway, we hope that helps.
Hope that helps. Yeah. Happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah. Happy holidays. Thanks for tuning into the Quantum Mystic.
Yeah, always a pleasure. And let us know how this resonates with you, and how your holiday's going.
Yeah, leave a comment for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Jane.